Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Scale notes derived by interval or modal distance. Get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin' with Microsoft Excel. Or in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay because we basically built this from a blank worksheet but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you may want to begin back there or just build the part of the table that we're currently working on. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below: fretboard, example, practice, blank. The fretboard tab having a simulated fretboard, we will refer to the example tab having, in essence, the answer key. The practice tab has pre-formatted cells, so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay because we'll be working in the blank tab where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet, and we'll be continuing, in essence, in the blank part of the worksheet going forward, practicing both Excel skills and music skills at the same time. We're now going to be building, in essence, the note names from the intervals as we think about our rotation through the 12 collections of 7 notes. Before we do that, let's give a quick recap of how we want to properly visualize our navigation of the fretboard, it being similar to a globe, having 7 continent or destination locations, 5 non-continent, non-destination or ocean locations. We imagine ourselves, our head above the fretboard, above the global fretboard, above this low or heavy E string, the one closest to the ceiling, and we imagine the fretboard spins around like the globe, having 12 degrees of rotation that we assign to it, being equivalent to the 12 notes in the musical alphabet, typically working in the 4th degree of rotation, or in other words, the collection of 7 notes around the key of C. Then we want to be looking at it not so much from the note names, but rather the permanent continent equivalent names, which is the Nashville number system, which is a permanent number system based on the modes. So the 1 is the Ionian, the 3 is the Phrygian, the 2 is the Dorian, and so on and so forth. What we're doing now is visualizing that we can build this shape by basically intervals, and the intervals are distances from any particular point. So if I'm on the Ionian, I can look at all the distances from it to build the shape around it. If I'm on the Mixolydian and we're on the related Mixolydian mode to the Ionian, then I could still build everything around this shape by measuring all the distances from a Mixolydian node. And so remember that the number line basically goes forwards and backwards, or you can think about it going around the block clockwise or counterclockwise. On the fretboard, it's a little bit more confusing because, of course, we have multiple strings. We're still going directionality pitch-wise up or down, but we have to remember the directions when we go between the strings are usually 5 notes between the strings. It's a little different between these two because of the fault line, which we've talked about in the past. But in general, if you're going down and to the right, those are going to be distances. We can look at the intervals that are going to build the shape going this way or up in pitch. If we're going backwards towards the back of the guitar or up towards the ceiling, then those are going to be the negative intervals, which people usually do not have as good a grasp on. But we need those to draw the shape around the middle, which will also help us get an idea of how chords will be constructed using intervals, which we'll talk more about in a future section. All right, let's go to the blank tab. So in prior presentations, we took our musical alphabet, the 12 notes. We looked at the key of C by applying the formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Then we have our collection of 7 notes. We assigned the normal convention with 1 octave of the intervals so that we can then build our worksheet going both clockwise and counterclockwise, or number line, note number line to the right, note number line to the left, right? And then we built around the Ionian all of the basically modal ranges, I would call them, to get to the other continents, all the non-ocean destinations, meaning an ID, an Ionian, an II, an ID, an IP, an IY, and so on. And then we looked at the distances to get from an I to an I to a D, or an I to a P in two different ways, one using the scale degrees, the other using, I think, a more precise distance measure, the modal distance. Then we looked at it in terms of the Dorian and did the same kind of idea, noting we also went in the negative direction, which is what many tables do not do. They just kind of ignore the fact that you can go counterclockwise, right? But you don't want to do that because you'd like to go directionally from the top to the bottom, bottom to the top of a guitar and be able to visualize it not only by shape, but also by actually counting out what you're doing, right? So, all right, so now what we're gonna do is take this information and build out the actual notes. Remember that our primary objective is to visualize the shape by not the note names, but the continent names. However, once I have that information, once I know all the continent names, I could build all of the note names from it because everything's going to shift up. All I'm doing is assigning the rotation of the planet. So let's see how we can basically do that and build a worksheet that will give us all of the notes in any key as we rotate through the 12 collections of notes with the same intervals that will be used. All right, so let's first go just in the clockwise direction. So I'm going to say this is going to be equal to the scale degree up top. I'm just going to pull down the same headers, and I'll copy this down, and I'll copy it to the right. And then I'm going to say this is going to be my root. Let's put it down here. I'll put root. And let's make this my header formatting, black and white. Home tab font group, we'll make it black. And then the lettering is white, as is our custom. Let's also center it. And then I'm going to copy the same thing here as well with our numbering. Scale degrees are going starting at 1. It would be better measured starting at 0. These are the continents up that we would be moving. So the scale degrees are off by 1 because we're counting the continent that we're on. We should be going Ionian to Ionian is going nowhere. And then going from the Ionian to the Dorian is going 1 continent up versus 2 continents because we're on the 1 continent. That's like someone saying that they took a lap around the block because they didn't go anywhere. It's like, no, you can't count the fact that your home base is not counted as a lap around the block. You have to, it only counts when you leave the house. That's when you start counting, okay? I don't mean to mess up your whole day with that, but that doesn't just saying. They're like, I ran a mile today. How did you run a mile? I just sat and watched TV. No, you have to actually move a mile away from the point that you're at before you count it as going a mile. Okay? But that's not how music does it. I'm doing it the way music does it. That's not how you do it. All right. Let's put the I'm going to say we're going to start off with the key of C, all right? So the key of C is a number 4. All right? A number 4. Okay? And then I'm going to put this equals the one above it. So we're going to build everything from this root note, which is the C, as we look at our notes. So I'm going to copy this down, and then I want to pull in the note number and letter, meaning if this is the 4, if I was to number the notes from 1 to 12, I want to pull in the C4 so I can see both the letter and the number. So how can I do that? We can use the trusty X lookup equals X lookup tab. And then we're going to say find this one, comma, where do we want to find it? In the array. I want you to find it in this array. Okay, and then comma, and then what do we want to return? I want you to return this array. So find that 4 and give me the related C4 over here. Boom, C4. Now I want to copy that down. Therefore, I have to make this one I want to move down. These two need to be permanent. Therefore, I'm going to say F4, 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 so that they do not move down. I might have to make them a mixed reference, but we'll talk about that later. Maybe not, I don't know. Let's copy it down. And so now we have the C4 all the way down for the root. I'm going to make this black and white as well. Black and white. We're going to build our Ionian scale shape around the C note point, similar to drawing a circle by putting a compass point down, using the compass to draw the circle around that point. Noting here, however, that we're not drawing a circle, we're drawing the scale shape of the Ionian shape using these distances, which you can imagine with a note number line perspective, we're only going to the right at this point, meaning it would be in a straight line, all the distances are going to the right, and then we'll go to the left when we go into the opposite direction or the negative or counterclockwise direction. However, if you visualize it as a circle or you visualize it on the fretboard, which has multiple strings, then you can imagine this is going to be building a shape as we go to the right and down. And then when we go up, it's going to go backwards towards the tail of the guitar and up, being measured by these distances. These distance terms, which are the intervals or the modal distance, basically have two measurement terms involved in them. The second number on each of them is the scale interval or the modal distance. Those are the number of continents that we are going up. The first number, which is going to be the most important number typically if we want to be counting notes, is going to be the note distance up. The first number is typically dropped by most people when they say intervals. I would recommend adding it because that's going to help you to count up the distance from any particular point, which will also help you to build chords, as we'll look at more closely in a future section. All right. So what I'd like to do is let's start on the second scale degree, which would be one modal distance. So we're going like one continent up from the Ionian node, which is the C note in this case. So if I go up one, what's the distance? It's 2 notes away. So it would be easiest for me to pick up this 2, which is inside both of these by saying it's the first number in both of them. But it would be kind of nice if I can pick it up from either the scale degree or the modal distance. So let me see if I can pick it up like from the modal distance number over here by saying I want to pick up the right of this number, and then, well, actually let's keep it easy. I'm just going to say this is going to be equal to the 2. So I want to pick up that 2 and I want to add it then to the 4. So I'm going to say this is going to be this 4 plus 2. I don't need to overcomplicate things. So that would be 6. That's going to be our distance then of 6. So in other words, if I start at 2 and then I go up a 2 note away major second or a 2 note away from the Ionian node first modal half step, then I'm going to get to note number 6, which is the D note. So what I'd like to do is for this number then to reflect the fact that we have the D note, number 1, and also it's going to run into a problem, this formula, if it gets to a number that's higher than 12. It needs to go around in a circle after it hits up to 12. What I'll do is I'll put some if logic in there. So we're going to say embed in front of it if tab, that plus that. I'm going to copy that. That's what I typically wanted to do. Copy that. If that is less than 13, meaning it could include 12, but it doesn't go up to 13, then, comma, do that. So same thing. And then if not, do that, but then subtract 12. Boom. So now if I copy this down, everything should move down relative. So it should work going down. And so notice this one went to 11 and then it went to a 1 instead of going to 13. So that looks correct. All right. So the next thing I would like to do is for this 6 to give me not just a 6, but I want it to give me a D6. So if I had another cell, it would look like this. I want to do something like this with an X lookup. I want to say do an X lookup of that 6, comma, and then find that 6 in this array, and then comma, and then return to me this one so that you find that 6 and give me a D6. And then it would do that. So how can I do that like in one cell? I can embed this whole X lookup thing in front of the 6. So let's see if I can just say, okay, I'm going to take that concept and I'm going to go in front of this whole thing because this whole thing results in a 6, right? So I'm just going to conceptually say, okay, I can embed then an X lookup here, and then I want this whole thing is going to be the lookup. That comes out to a 6. That's the first part of the argument. And then I'm going to say, comma, find that 6 in this array, and then comma, and then return to me this array, and then enter. And it should close it up for me. There it is, D6. All right, now this is no longer useful. Now, to copy it down, the two arrays need to not move down. So I have to F4 the arrays, F4, $, making it absolute before the letter and the number, $signs before the letter and number, F4 and F4. So now the two arrays, these two columns, will not move down when I copy it down. Everything else should move down when I copy it down. So let's copy that down and see what happens. So there it goes. That looks correct. And so let's pull it up. None of these have any sharps and flats, which is what we expect when we're in the key of C. So that looks good. So now we've built this shape around it, right? So now it's and I could see that this is 0 distance away, so it's still on the C. This is going from the C up 2 notes. Why? Because I went a 2-note away major second, or 2-note away Ionian first modal half step. This one is going from the C up 4 notes. Why? Because it's a 4-note away major third, or 4-note away Ionian second modal half step. This is going up from this point, the C, 5 notes. Why? Because it's a 5-note away perfect fourth, or a 5-note away Ionian third. This one's going up from the C 7 notes, because it's a 7-note away perfect fifth, or 7-note away Ionian fourth. So if I go over to my fretboard, then if you look here, then everything to the right and down from this range, like from this range here up above, in essence, this range, is going higher in pitch. That's what we just kind of built right now, right? So this is what this is here is going to be a 2-note away major second, a 4-note away major third, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-note away perfect fourth. And then if I go down to here, because of the fault line, this fault line shifted up, so there's 5 notes between these two strings. That's going to be a 5-note away distance, which is going to be a perfect fourth if you think about it that way, right? So this is still going up, and it's going up here because these two notes are like the same. And so this note is still going to be a 2-note away, right? It's 2 notes away from here or from here, major second. So we've built basically this side of the compass. And you can also think about octaves going up past, you know, that point as well. So we've built this side. Now we have to build the upper half, which is going to be going in the counterclockwise direction. So all of this you can imagine on a note number line, it would just be going infinitely to the right if it was all on one string. But of course, the multiple strings represent higher notes that are on the number line. This is just repeating right here. So we're still just going up this number line this way. It's the same thing as going this way, right? Okay. So then let's go back on over here. And so now I could copy this to the right and say, well, what if I built the whole thing using a C Dorian shape. So that's going to give us some sharps and flats if we do that. So let me copy this over. What if I copied this to here? I want to do it under this one. And it's going to say, okay, now it's taking the wrong number here. So I have to say, all right, I need to absolute reference. I need that 4 to remain the same. So how can I do that? We're going to go on over. That's in P21. So I want P21 to move down, the numbers to move down, but not to move to the right. So I need a mixed reference, $sign before the P on here, $sign before the P here, $sign before the P here. And then that shouldn't change anything on this side. If I copy that down, I should get the same stuff, copy it up. So that seems right. But if I copy this over here, then does that work? Let's see. We've got now the 4, and it's looking up over here. From that 4, it's going a distance of 0, which is still a C. If I go from that 4, a distance of 2 from the D, a distance of 2 from the D, 6 is going to get me an E. Wait a sec. Is that right? From that 4, It's going from the D. Yeah, it's going to go from the D, from the C to the D. I got that mixed up. From the C to the D. Okay, that makes sense. I think that works. So now this one has sharps and flats in it because now we're looking at the Dorian from the perspective of a C Dorian. So these are complementary collections of notes. So we'll pull out all the collections of notes and we'll base it on this root note so that I can then change this root note and we should be able to see all 7 collections of notes that are from each of the different modes, right? So the complementary mode, or you're starting at the C for the Ionian, you're starting at the C for the Dorian, and so on. So if I go to the Phrygian and we paste that over here, we go to the Phrygian right there, boom. So now we have all of the notes for the C Phrygian. And then we go over to the Lydian and we have the notes for the C Lydian. And then we go to the Mixolydian and we have all of the notes for the C Mixolydian. And then the Aeolian, we can go here and say, boom, all of the notes for the C Aeolian. And then we can go here and say these are going to be the notes for the C Locrian. Okay, so that's great. So now you can kind of test that out. We'll do that more possibly in OneNote by changing your map over here and saying, okay, what if I went to the D Dorian or something like that? So if I went from 4 to 6, now I'm on a D, Ionian D, right? And so I could go over here and say, all right, let me change this to a 6. And then that would give me the Ionian D on this side. Or I can go back on over here and say, let's put this back to a 4. And that's going to give me then the D Dorian, right? So I can see this shape in the D Dorian. So how can I get to the D Dorian over here? I can make this a 4. I'm sorry, I can make this a 6. So now I have the Ionian is D Ionian, but here is D Dorian. And you could see that D Dorian doesn't have any sharps and flats, so it looks like it's populating properly. Okay, so let's go and then you can map that out, which we might do in the OneNote area on the fretboard. And you could say, okay, does that make sense if I looked at it around the Dorian and I built my shape from this point around the Dorian? It's good practice to do that because, again, that's kind of how you can think about building chords more systematically, not simply by shape, but by distance, particularly going upwards from the root that's on the bottom of the guitar, building kind of inverted chords. All right, so I'm gonna go above it now, so we'll build the shape above it. So I have to move this down. So I'm gonna select this whole bit here. We'll go all the way across. And I need to move it down. So we're going to say, all right. And then I'm going to right click on that and insert and shift it down. Boom. Okay. So now we're going to imagine we go backwards. So now we have our distances up top. Here's the intervals. We're really concerned with the first number, which is going to be the note distance from whatever point that we're going from. So if I go, I'm going to say this is going to be equal to the negative distances. So we're going to go 1 scale degree back, or 1 modal half step back, 1 continent back. And let's copy that up. And then I don't need these two, so it goes up to that 7. And then I can delete. I can move all this up like 2. So let's move it up. Wait a second. Let's move it up. Let's delete from here, let's say, on up to here. So I just need 1 space in between. So I'll delete that and shift them up. Okay, so now we have a nice working space. So if we go back then, let's think about this. We're now going to say, I need to make this, let's bring it back to a C, 4. And I'm going to say this is going to equal the 4. So we're going to start from the same spot again, going in the counterclockwise or negative direction. And this will be equal to the 4 below it, let's say. And so this is going to be copied up. Boom. Okay, and then we're going to say this will be the same X lookup. So I can copy this. So we're going to start from that same point going in the negative direction. So what would I like this to do? I want it to take that 4 and plus, because this is a negative number, plus the negative, which would be -1. That would take us to a 3. So in other words, on the number line, if we're on a 4, minus that 1 distance is going to take me back to a 3, which would be a B. So similarly, I need this to return to me the X lookup 3, but I also need it to not go negative, because now we're in danger of it going negative. So if it goes below 0, then we have a problem. So let's solve that second problem first. We're going to say if tab this plus this is, let's say, greater than 0. If it's greater than 0, then we're good. Then I'm going to copy this and paste that here and say comma, then do that. But if not, you have to do that, and then you have to add 12. And then that should make it okay. So we're going to say, okay, something's wrong. Wait a second. This shouldn't need a bracket. Get that bracket out of here. I don't know why this bracket shouldn't be here. Okay. So then I can copy that up. And does that work? So we have 3, 1, and then it didn't go negative. It went to 11. So that looks correct. I think that's right. So now I want it to return to me just like the X lookup, the actual number and letter. So equals X lookup. Find that number, comma, in this array. I want to find that here, comma, and return to me this. Boom. That's what I want it to do, but I want it to do all in one cell. So that this whole thing came out to be a 3. So all I have to do is embed the X lookup in front of that. So I can just say, I got a moth that keeps flying in front of my face. Get out of here, moth. You're looking, crazy moth. I'm going to say this is going to be this X lookup. Find that 6, comma. I want you to find that 6 in this array. And then return to me then this number, this array. And this array should have gone down to 12. And then boom. And it should close it up. So there it is. So that's good. Now I just need to make those arrays so they don't move. So I'm going to F4 the arrays. F4 $ before the letter and number. F4, F4, and F4 $ before the letters and numbers. Everything else I want to move up. So then I can move these up. Boom. So that looks good. So now, once again, I'm on my check figure. I don't have any sharps or flats. That makes sense because I'm drawing the Ionian around the C. So now we're going to say, okay, so if I went one step backwards, I get to the B if I start on the C. If I start on the 4 and I go 3 steps backwards, I get to the A because it goes around the horn. If I go 5 steps backwards, then I get to the G. So let's delete that. That's the general idea. So if I go to the fretboard, that once again builds if I go backwards this way, it's going to build the backward steps. So remember that this kind of repeats over here. These are like the same notes. So in a number line, I'd be going back here. But because we have another string, this repeats over here. So really this whole thing is still going negative from like a note number line negative direction. So this would be -1 modal half step, 1 note back. And this would be -2 modal half steps, -1, 2, 3 notes back. Remembering that we don't really have negative scale degrees, so the negative intervals kind of fall apart, but you need to get some kind of convention that you're going to use so that you can count counterclockwise, right? Or going in the negative number line direction. Now to copy this over, I need to once again make that 4 so it doesn't move to the right. So that's in P23. So I want to make the P not move, but the 23, the number can. So I put a $sign before the P there, a $sign before the P there, and a $sign before the P there. That's not a $sign, that's an and. And then I should copy that up. It shouldn't change anything if I copy it up. So then I can copy that over and see if it does what we would expect over here. Boom. Dorian, so that's fine. So I think that's correct. I should have the same notes going this way too, right? In the counterclockwise direction, the same collection of 7 notes is one way we can check it, since now we have sharps and flats. Let's go to here. We'll paste it here, and 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 that's it. So now we've got our collection of notes going forwards and backwards for all the modes around the C. Now remember, these are all the modes from the same point of the C. They're not the related modes. So there's 2 ways that we can kind of look at this. We could have looked at the related mode, meaning if I looked at the same collection of notes and I started from the Dorian, then I would get the same collection of notes with no sharps and flats if I was looking at the D Dorian. So in other words, if I want to look at these collection of notes in the Dorian, then I would need a D Dorian. So I can make this a 6, the D, and now this is the collection of notes that doesn't have any sharps and flats. If I make this a DE, which would be 8, then this collection of notes doesn't have any sharps and flats. That's how you'd get to the Phrygian that doesn't have any sharps and flats, right? Is going to be the idea. All right. So let's go back to the 4 here. Let's just format this thing. So I'm gonna format this green. Let's make this green. Go into the thing up top, and we'll say let's make this like this green, and then I'll put some borders around it, and then we'll make this green, and we'll put some borders around it, and then let's make this orange because that's going to be our thing that we're drawing from. So I'll make that orange, and then this one I'll put borders around it, and then I'll make this bit orange. The red one is the only thing we need to change. That's the thing that we're going to adjust. So I'll make this orange. Then let's say that this is, let's pull this over. This is the Ionian. So I'm going to say this equals the Ionian. And I'll make this like green maybe, so we can see that it's the Ionian, and white. And then this is going to be, let's copy that Ionian here, and that'll be the Dorian. This will be the Phrygian. I'm just pasting this across. The Lydian. This is, oh, wait a sec. Here is the Mixolydian and the Aeolian and the Locrian. And so I'll just alternate the colors. I'll make this one blue. So let's make this one blue to alternate. And then we'll make every other one I'll make blue. Let's make this blue, just so we can see a change between them, even though it's pretty obvious because there's a giant space between them. We'll make these blue. Oh wait, this one's going to be green, and then this one will be green, and then wait a second, undo. Down here is green, and then this one. Dang, this moth is just taunting me. I swear, as soon as I'm done with you, will pay the price for your taunting. I'll tell you. Okay, let's make this bordered. Let's make this bordered. And let's make this borders around it. And I'm just going to put the borders around here to make it looks nice. And we'll do these at the same time. This time I'm holding down Control to get non-adjacent cells, or ones that are not next to each other, to border them all at the same time. And then we'll put borders around this one. All right, so there's the idea. So we can kind of you can kind of play with the idea of building the shape around any of these points on the fretboard, and then you can change the shape if you wanted to by, of course, using this worksheet, which we'll build later, to a different, if you want to look at the Dorian, I'm sorry, at the D, Ionian D, and then all of the related modes to it. You can change the shape on the fretboard using this one, which we'll build later, and then you can kind of build any shape you want, and then basically practice how you can kind of build the shape around any of the node points using the interval distances, and get an idea of what the intervals basically mean, going both forward clockwise, which is to the right and down on the guitar, and counterclockwise or backwards on the guitar. So I'm going to bring this back to a 4, which is kind of like our default, and then we'll go, and this will also, that kind of practice helps you to kind of get an idea of the two common ways to switch between keys, that being to keep the root the same. So if I play in the key of C, and then I go to the Dorian, maybe I play then and I switch to the C Dorian. So then I have the same root, but my notes, that I'm going to change some of the notes within it, which will subtly give the change without too much jarringness, maybe, to allow you to kind of maneuver around between keys, because I'm keeping the center point, the root, the same. Or you do the related modes, meaning I'm in the key of C and then I go to the related Dorian, D Dorian. I make it the center point, right? And then I make the E the center point. Now I'm in E Phrygian, same collection of notes, but now I'm just focusing in on a different center point. Those are the two common ways that you can kind of maneuver through keys in a subtle way without having a jarring effect while you're composing a song or improvising or whatever.